Hey, my name is Major Michael Cuddy, and during this presentation, I'm going to walk you through a hybrid simulation model I developed to visualize contested logistics in large scale, multi domain combat environments with the express purpose of helping commanders understand the effects of MDO threats on military supply networks and convoy survivability over a 120-hour forecast horizon. The motivation purpose behind this is really to enable and enhance commander decision making in a modern battlefield that has really outpaced traditional visualization methods. The amount of information that's coming into tactical operations centers and staffs having to process is pretty significant. And so this research aims to add modeling and simulations to help understand all that data, visualize it, and make a better decision. So the problem statement here is how can contested logistics be visualized over 120 hours into the future to provide decision enhancement against a combination of drone, air, land, and cyber threats? So here's an overview of the system. Two main components here: an agent-based heat threat map applied to a division-level supply network, and a discrete event simulation of convoys supplying outlying brigades with food, water, ammo, and fuel. And both of these simulations interact together with one another to provide some key outputs, which is that visually progressive heat map that the commander can see, an indication of convoy survivability statistics, and then understanding which route segments are the most of concern. So the S2 and S4 are key here, and the S2 provides all the threat information for the convoy routes, each route segment over a 120-hour period, and the S4 provides all the demand data from the brigades and what needs to happen in terms of the supply convoys. So the first Cavalry Division was used as a case study here, and you can see the division is arrayed in kind of its combat posture in a let's-go environment against a near-peer adversary. And what I needed to do was visualize the threat risk across this supply network and figure out how I was going to display those threats accordingly, whether it be drone, land, air, cyber. For drone, I wanted to include that because that is a new emerging thing from the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And in researching that, I found that there's a lot of drone effectiveness 10 to 30 kilometers from the forward line of troops up here. And so you're going to see a lot of persistent drone attacks that account for about 70% of Russian vehicle kills, which is pretty staggering. Fiber optic drones can come out to 50 kilometers, which is about here, and still be effective. So for tier one, I'm going to have persistent drone threats. This is going to account for the largest risk weight. Tier two will have half the strength of tier one drones to account for that longer range. And then tiers 3 and 4, no drones, but you'll have a persistent land, air, and cyber threat all the way throughout. So you can see here on the bottom right hand side kind of what those threats look like per tier in the methodology that I came up with. And I also built in a master risk dial for an S2 officer to adjust up or down to, make it more aggressive, less aggressive based on their liking. So this is tailorable to both the S2 and S4. Here's an overview of the actual hybrid simulation, the architecture, and the process flows. The big thing here to talk about is there's three different parts of this: the heat map logic, the convoy logic, and the kill probability logic. And all three interact with one another at different points of the simulation to give you the complete picture. The route heat map logic takes the threat data and basically pulls all the route segments, paints all the routes the color they need to be based on the hour that the risk was associated. So green for low threat, yellow for moderate threat, orange for significant threat, and then red for severe threat. And so as the route heat map logic is going through, it's feeding that information down to the discrete event convoy logic that is getting kill probabilities assigned to all the convoys that are coming through. Tried to make it as realistic as possible, so units don't request supplies until they're below 70% threshold. There is a priority split request here. So if a unit is below 50%, it gets priority over a unit that's above 50%, but still below that 70% threshold. Triangular distributions were used for loading the trucks and the outbound travel to include realism, and those were informed by subject matter experts, both on the intel side and the logistics side. And the ultimate end goal here is to output those key performance indicators so you can see what's actually happening in the simulation with kill counts, deliveries by commodity, and unmet demand across the division. Input analysis, demand data, truck capacities, truckload times, convoy travel time, all deterministic. So these are all informed by subject matter experts who indicated what they expected to see with these inputs coming into it. The convoy travel time uses real Google Earth routes at 45 kilometers an hour, so you can see the formula for those times. And again, a triangular distribution was used for those travel times for the absolute fastest we could expect to see a convoy move from point A to point B, the average, and then the max time it would take based on normal delays you might get from point A to point B. So to give a little bit more realism. In terms of the route thread data itself by risk domain, that was deterministic as well, and it was informed by subject matter experts. And in terms of land risk, intel officers expected to see nighttime operations occurring at a much higher peak than daytime operations. So that's a normal diurnal pattern with a little bit of Gaussian noise to indicate some daytime operations. That top left-hand graph shows exactly that. It's a time series graph of the land risk across 120 hours, and it shows you those replicated peaks every 24 hours at nighttime operations. In terms of drone risk, they expected to see drones either off or on. They're either flying or they're not flying, and they're very persistent across the board. And so it's a bimodal distribution with overwhelming persistence, and that's what you see in the top right-hand side time series graph of the drone risk. For the air risk, I consulted some intelligence officers for aviation units, and they expected to see more mild but deliberate peaks aligned with air attack planning timelines. So not as persistent as drone threats, but you can see a couple of the high peaks here indicating some major air attack operations happening around the 30 to 70 hour time frame. In terms of cyber risk, they didn't really assess that to be a huge risk to convoy operations, but it still does play a factor in culmination with other risks. So, kind of flat with sporadic peaks, and then there's an offset when these major air attacks are happening. They did not expect to see an increase in cyber attacks, so that's accounted for here, and you can see that in this time series graph here. In terms of the simulation itself and what can be controlled, you can control every aspect of the simulation to suit your needs or your unit's needs. Here you can see all the nodes and their starting quantities of commodities. I did this based on kind of a general consensus of what 120 Bradley fighting vehicles looks like across 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Brigade, 3CR, and then the div cab for the division. Ammo 30 millimeter, and then fuel, all the same, 3 days of supply. It can vary, but it's reasonably accurate information. Water and food based on 3 MREs a day, 3 gallons of water a day, and those are pretty close to the realistic numbers of personnel in those units. Reorder percentage, less than 70%. We're going to send up a request for a convoy, and the target is always to get to 100% for commodities across all brigade nodes. We talked about risk weights and their contribution to total and their risk scale dial there as well. In terms of convoy truck pool and capacities, we went with 113 PLS trucks with trailer, and each one of those commodities represents about the max capacity for that one PLS truck and trailer combination. And so that's what you can see in the simulation as it goes through. So here's a simulation in action, and I'll go ahead and start it. And what you can see is the routes do change in time by hour based on the cumulative threat associated with that route itself. And so while that's happening, the brigades are going to burn commodities at 24-hour increments. So 24 hours, they're going to burn a certain amount of food, water, fuel, ammo, and trigger a resupply request that will send convoys through the convoy discrete event up here. And then as those are going through, the kill probability logic is going to kill off vehicles based on, how high of a threat they're receiving. And then you can see a roll up of those individual trucks killed here, the segment they were on, the hour they were killed, the commodity they were carrying, and the quantity of commodity they were carrying. You see a per node roll up of what was delivered versus the unmet demand that didn't get delivered. And then you see a kills by node here that shows you what node sustained the most convoy kills en route to them, and then the quantity of commodities destroyed cumulatively going to that brigade. So it gives the S2 and the S4 a good bit of information to work from to assess potential strategies of moving vehicles along certain routes or different types of times of day. I'll speed it up to get to the end here. You can see the routes change pretty regularly and fluidly. In the end, you see it roll up about 25% to 30% of the trucks were killed. Started with 113, left with 69. So pretty accurate with what we intended. In terms of verification and validation, basically that the code was stepped through deliberately, and then subject matter experts were used to validate both the accuracy and realism of the simulation itself and the behavior of the simulation. And they were able to play around with it, change input conditions, increase threat levels, do everything to make sure that it behaved the way they expected it to. And so I did an experiment with the simulation to look at the supply demand versus truck kill percentage. And basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to assess how supply, demand, and threat conditions influence convoy survivability, the truck kill percentage, and unmet demand. The null hypothesis here was that changing the demand level or initial supply stock for the DSB quantities doesn't really affect the fraction of convoy trucks killed. The alternative hypothesis is that at least in one of the scenarios, we would see a significant difference in convoys killed, meaning that there was a unique relationship between supply, demand, and kill percentage of trucks. So I did 3 different scenarios here to kind of test this out. I did a scenario 1, which is a baseline, which means run the model as is, default parameter settings, no changes. Scenario 2 is doubling the demand across all brigades and leaving the DSB supply unchanged. And scenario 3 was double all brigade supply or demands, and then double the DSB's total supply so that we can't attribute any unmet demand to a lack of supplies in the DSB. So what we did here is we looked at some key outputs measured, the fraction of convoy trucks killed, total unmet demand, delivered commodities by type, and the variability across replications. We looked at 30 replications per scenario of Monte Carlo simulations, looking at mean standard deviation and 95% confidence interval, and pairwise Welch's t-tests to test for significant differences in kill fraction and unmet demand. And then we finally did a sensitivity analysis of the risk scalar and the kill bin probabilities, tested over 7,000 iterations to make sure it behaved properly as we expect it to. So here's the results in analysis. The right-hand side, you can see the graphs that show you the fraction of killed trucks across all 3 scenarios, the unmet demand, and then the pairwise statistical test there as well. And the big key finding here is this kill fraction remains stable across all scenarios. So even increasing supply demand and doubling the DSB's total stock didn't really affect the kill percentage that much. Meaning that really the big thing to look at here is supply demand, and what's in the DSB is the main contributing factor for any unmet demand that we might see in the simulation. So not what I was expecting. I expected the kill percentage to increase based on supply demand and more trucks being on the road, but the test shows that wasn't the case. So a unique insight, but proves the viability of the tool itself to test different experiments like this. In terms of the sensitivity analysis, I wanted to look at the kill probability logic to make sure it behaved accurately, because it's a big part of this simulation. And so I want to determine how changes in the kill bin probabilities influence the convoy kill percentage, delivered supplies, and total unmet demand. So over 7,000 iterations, I want to look at the risk scalar and each one of the probability kill bins, the green, yellow, orange, and red, that assign the colors. And I want to step through those at increments of, 0.05, 0.02, from their minimum to maximum range over 7,000 iterations to see what is the difference. Is there any significant difference? Is there any anomalies? Anything that indicates that the kill probability logic is not executing properly. The big thing is the big key finding is the kill fraction rises predictably with increased kill bin probabilities as expected. So at high kill levels, logistics shift from lethality limited to supply limited, revealing two operational regimes. So there's no nonlinear jumps or instability. The kill logic performs consistently across full parameter space. And what this does is from the Spearman RHO and p-values, we can see there's a monotonic relationship between the kill percentage and unmet demand, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So it behaves accurately. In conclusion, core takeaways here, convoy survivability is really resilient across all scenarios, showing that the threat posture, not logistics tempo, drives convoy losses. Threat patterning, not logistics tempo, is the primary driver of convoy losses. Validating that the threat model and kill logic work as intended. In terms of operational insights, under high demand conditions, the system transitions from really lethality limited, which is enemy driven, to supply limited, capacity driven logistics, which was kind of interesting to me. And so the implications for commanders here is this is a viable tool to visually look at what contested logistics is going to do to supply operations over a 120-hour period, and understand the implications to convoy losses based on specific threats and what that looks like across the entire supply network. In terms of future work, really want to try and take this from a prototype to a full-blown commander-focused decision aid. And so I'll touch on a few highlights here. The first being the inclusion of AI-generated rerouting for convoys. So based on learning the behavior of the threats over time to understand what is the best routes for the convoys take to mitigate risk as much as possible. And what this does is it'll produce 3 courses of action to the commander to say, hey, you ran the baseline simulation, you know what the risk is now. Here's 3 courses of action you could take that's going to mitigate the risk if you change route structure this way, or travel this time of day instead of this time of day, or any other combination of courses of action, leveraging AI to help process through all that information and give the best courses of action. It really helps the S2 and the S4 understand where they can gain some efficiencies and leverage the technology to make better decisions. We can improve the overall simulation itself, including more classes of supply, different vehicles, different vehicle types, utilizing the brigades to push and pull logistics, and then look at integrating the simulation into warfighter exercises to test, is this a viable tool? Do commanders like it? Do they want to see something different, modified, whatever the case may be? And really the ultimate goal here is to integrate this in the next gen of C2 systems to be a common simulation tool that both S2s and S4s can use in supply organizations. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thanks.